Hello, everyone. So, this is our first post-game chat. Down the road, we'll actually have probably a show that for each of the games. One will be Talking Zool, and the other one will be Crosstalk. You want to say hi, Cliff?
Hi, Cliff.
Well done.
Thank you.
So, yeah, it's good if we just check, make sure that everyone can hear everything. I know we had some audio issues the other day, and I'd like to avoid those this time.
But we are diligently working on that, and we want everybody to know that we have the finest audio equipment in the gaming content providing business.
Yes, we have good equipment. I think there's other challenges around it.
Well, that is true.
So,
we're very excited. We're glad to have everybody here with us. We're very excited to be working with not one but two fantastic casts. The first in Scott's Crosscodes campaign for Dungeons and Dragons 5th edition Esper Genesis, which is a science fiction space opera adventure supplement, and my campaign Zealots is Zool for 5th edition with a very strong sword and sorcery. Classic pulp fiction, bent to it. So we're very excited. We've got two great casts who have who we feel are really helping to bring the story to alive. And I'm very. I see we have one of our players that has joined us on our. And is he on Twitch or Discord? You have to tell me, Scott, because I'm learning real.
He's on Twitch, and video is fine, says, and audio says is a bit echoey. That could be my room. The studio that I work in is probably, it's all hard walls. I probably need to put up a little bit of foam to dampen some of that. So, and it's saying that I have echo, and that's probably because I am splitting the mic so that Cliff's audio can be heard clearly through it too. So,
that's a very noble sacrifice you're making.
And you're a bit low, is what I'm hearing.
I can speak up like this if you like to
perfect. That's perfect.
All right, good. This is how I'm going to run my games from now on.
I think that it sounds a lot better over the computer that way. You probably think you sound like Mickey Mouse. It's really much deeper, more like Darth Vader.
I was just gonna say I'm gonna do Darth Vader's greatest lines in that voice. Apology accepted, Captain Nina. I find your lack of faith disturbing.
It doesn't feel any different.
It doesn't. Well, that's because I have sense around in here.
I think it's the level of evil they both represent.
And worse that effect. So I am very excited to be able to play in your Crosscodes campaign for 5th edition Esper Genesis. Can you do me a favor? I don't know if you realize this or not, but I'm sort of one of those throwback actors that I didn't read when you hand me a script, I don't read the source material. I just read the script and I interpret the script from my heart, So, like for instance, if I'm doing a biblical epic, don't expect me to read the Bible. I'm just going to read the script, you know what I mean? Bible, what is a Bible? So in this case, I'm very impressed with what you have done to create a really viable and workable and believable science fiction universe. Tell me a little bit about, and tell our friends here, those who are going to be tuning in, what is Esper Genesis exactly? What the backstory of the game is, the conceit of the game is, if you will.
Well, the conceit of the game is that all various races have come together in the galaxy, the same galaxy that Earth is in, and they've come together through a series of transportation hubs similar to in Dune, the way that they would fold space. Well, in this case, though, the space folding isn't done by an alien or a modified person. It is done by this moon-sized or planet-sized physical presence that is made of this material that it has all sorts of properties and powers. So it's allowed the galaxy to come together very quickly. What it's done, though, is it's put everybody into instant access to almost anywhere in the galaxy with minimal regard for the cost of what that means. And there's so many ways that affects everything. Instant communication or near instant communication, instant travel or near instant travel. They are using the thorium. The thorium is the material that these crucibles are made of, but it also is mined to be used in all kinds of spaceships and weapons and devices and machines. And even though it seems like there's an unlimited amount of material, there's really nothing that says that it can't be mined out. Now, the thing about the crucibles is nobody knows who built them. Nobody knows where they came from. Nobody knows how they got there. So one of the things that I wanted to do in my game, and it hasn't been revealed yet, but I have written in some of the history that is that backstory to the story we're in now, which I believe actually they might be doing some of that in some of the supplementary books that are coming next. I know they have the threats database, and then there's another book, I don't remember the name off the top of my head, that are both coming, and I believe that that's one of the things they're going to talk about. But in the interim, I made my own.
Right. Well, that's great, and well, you've always been very good at that. We've been playing for, I don't want to say how many years, but
more than 5.
Yeah, longer than some of our players are alive.
Yeah.
But I would say that the crucibles, which are the stargates,
Yes.
if you will. As you're alluding to, we don't know what the cost is, the environmental cost, if you will, the cost of the space, the warping of the space-time continuum. I was very struck. I enjoyed the first session that we played last week was fun as a player, getting a chance to interact with the world. We're on the planet Croesus, which it's always nice to experience a little science mixed in with your science fiction. And in this case, Croesus is a planet that is tidally locked, right?
It is. I said tidally locked. It is actually tidally locking.
It's in the process of being
yes, it's moving so slowly in relationship that there are thousands of years to go 100 miles of rotation. So it's not completely, but it's so close that it's almost irrelevant to be able to tell.
That's what I was going to ask you, to expound on what that means for a planet to be tidally locked. I mean, we are on Earth. The Earth rotates around the Sun. We rotate every 24 hours. It takes 365, or I say the Earth turns every 24 hours. It takes 365 days to make a complete rotation around the Sun.
Right.
So how does that differ from a planet like Croesus?
So Croesus, when a planet is tidally locked, it becomes like our moon, where there's a dark side and a light side, meaning that one side of the planet never sees the sun, or so infrequently sees the sun that it's the equivalent of not seeing it. And then one side gets the sun constantly. It never doesn't get the sun. So when it happens, because planets basically start to warp from the gravity, and they become a little bit more oval in shape rather than a pure circle, rather than a pure globe, which happens to every planet. Everything's like that. And that means there's...
Because gravity from the sun is literally pulling
correct.
the planet.
So the planet, as it becomes more oval, part of the planet then is closer to the sun, and it gets more pull on it over time. The spin gets slowed down to the point of no spin at all anymore. And once that happens, then you're tidally locked. That means that you don't get tides from the gravity of the sun, although you can get them from the moon, and this planet does have a moon. So there is tide from that. But those two forces actually create most of our tides. It's the sun and the moon. If you have no moon and you have only a sun and you get tidally locked, it's very likely you won't have tides at all, or so minimal that they'll be irrelevant. You may not have atmosphere either, so who knows what else will happen. But one of the things that the game, and I want to, actually, there's a great video that I saw on this by Isaac Arthur, who, if you follow him on YouTube, he puts out brilliant science fiction and science fact comparative videos where he'll talk about what is the fiction and fact of certain things. And there was a video that I watched on that was really helpful and enlightening for that. It came about from reading the Isaac Asimov book, the Foundation trilogy. There was a planet that was tidally locked.
Foundation.
Yeah. And he talked about that. So I listened to what was going on in that video that he talked about, and I thought that's a really interesting idea. The idea that there's never a sunset, there's never a night. One thing that we'll probably get into at some point, but we haven't yet, which is what that does to people's metabolism. Like, when do you know to sleep? So people have to create false systems to create sleep opportunities, or else people would just get exhausted. Or you'd have to somehow modify yourself to never be tired, which would probably shorten your life quite a bit, I would think. But one of the things, and getting away from that, one of the things that you had asked me about was also the conceit of the game. The other conceit of the game is that those crucibles, when they were discovered, they changed the people that were the discoverers. Once you're exposed to it, a percentage of your population will gain powers from their relationship to the Saurium on the crucibles or wherever it's at. So, and when I say powers, it's science fiction versions of psionics or magic powers. I don't like to use the word magic, because in this it is science, although science beyond the explanation of those who use it. So in the Arthur Clarke variation of science, it is, it's beyond their comprehension, so it's magic.
Sure, any culture that's so advanced that will appear to be magical to those who are not
right,
who are not thusly informed. Right, and the crucibles. So in other words, those people who manipulate the crucibles, they themselves are altered by the experience.
Yeah. And it's a permanent alteration. Once it happens, you have whatever benefits you get, which in the game, everyone, in the conceit of the game as per Genesis, is that every player character is an Esper. They have some sort of abilities that are that have been manifest because of their contact with Saurium, or it could be their parents' contact with Saurium, and it has become genetic and carried down through the family. But at some point, that exposure created or changed their DNA in such a way that they now have some kind of abilities. Even specialists, who generally are more about skills and what would seem more mundane capabilities, their capabilities are actually enhanced by their genesis. It just isn't quite as obvious as, say, moving a rock with your mind.
So, what else is is notable about Freesis? What's the content like? What's the and how how commonplace, I guess, if you will, are espers in your world?
Well, I'll talk about Freesis first, and then I'll get to the espers. Freesis is a mostly desert planet. It is not completely desert, and it's not only a sand desert. There's a lot of life on the planet, which is why it's in the middle of terraforming, because it already started out with a pretty good base. There are plants that grow under the sand, and then they open their leaves when there's any kind of a rainstorm. That's what the animals in the desert actually eat a lot, is these giant leaves will roll out only when there's rain, because they get buried by the sand soon afterward anyway. So it's almost like kelp fields, in that they'll just grow very fast when they need to, and then they'll sit dormant until the opportunity re-arises. But there's one sea that's a very large sea that goes almost north to south, North Pole to South Pole, that is also teeming with life. Matter of fact, that's where they get most of their food, the green cake that were mentioned a couple times, which is basically an algae that they treat like tofu and flavor in every way that you would flavor tofu. That's why spice of every kind is such a valuable commodity on the planet, because everybody wants their food to taste a little better. But also, the planet as a whole, it is, as a desert planet, it's a desert because of dryness, not only because of heat. There's heat, but on the dark side of the planet, it's actually pretty cold most of the time, just because there's no sunlight except ambient, whatever sun is bouncing inside the atmosphere. That might get a little bit of ambient light, so there might be a dim glow. But the planet's been in the process of being terraformed by Earth for about 300 years. And in my game, terraforming is not something that happens like it did in Star Trek with the Genesis probe or whatever that hit the planet and boom, it was full of life. It takes thousands or tens of thousands of years to make it really the way you want it to be. And they're doing okay. They're now testing, flocks of animals that are being genetically altered to fit the climate, with minor setbacks, minor successes. It'll be 1,000 years before it's fully habitable the way that Earth would like it to be. But it's a whole planet. It's worth the investment in time and cost. Then, as far as espers in my game, espers they're a small percentage of the population, but they're a notable percentage of the population. It's not so uncommon that nobody sees them. Everybody sees them sometimes. The closer you are to space, the more likely it is. If you travel on spaceships a lot, you're more likely to run into espers than if you stay on a planet your whole life. And that's just because there's more opportunities for exposure to thorium. Planetary power systems have used thorium sometimes. Weapons, there are some very powerful weapons that use thorium. So any exposure is the opportunity for you to go through Esper-Genesis. But the biggest way is when a planet discovers it and it's immediately exposed to everyone in that system. There's like a thorium explosion that just sends radiation, thorium radiation, which is not a deadly radiation, out for a long distance. So that's when the genesis can actually happen. As far as the percentage, it depends on the race.
The genesis is the change that happens in the individual.
Correct. Yeah, or in the people as a whole. In some cases, like the Eldori, the whole race went through an Esper-Genesis transformation. Now, that doesn't mean they all ended up with all kinds of powers, but they've all been touched by it. Because it literally exploded and destroyed their moon. When it happened, it split and created a schism between the people there. Half of them became the lower entity, half of them remained the Eldori and stayed there. There were there was a war over what happened at that point. So one of the things that I loved about Esper Genesis when I saw it was I liked in most cases the races felt like they were plausible enough. Although they did have the very trope, of the cat alien and the lizard alien, which were not my favorite things, but I'm working on having them be a little less like Earth lizards and Earth cats, and just be a furry alien and a scaled alien that isn't like what you would expect. They don't look like Komodo dragons that stand, and they don't look like pumas that stand. So,
Right, and and of course the game happily lends itself to these kinds of adjustments. Because the game master, every game master, every dungeon master has his or her preferences and and how they like their science fiction or in the case of straight up D&D fantasy served up. As a shameless plug for my own Zealots and Soul campaign with D&D, the edition campaign I'm running right after Crosscodes. We sort of stripped bare many of the familiar tropes, conceits of fantasy, both fantasy and role playing. There's no elves. I mean, there's elves in the fiction of the races in the world of Zul, but the elves don't exist. Wars don't exist. There are non-human races, but we mine the rich expanse of Earth's history for our cultural archetypes and the excitement of delving into the richness of ancient Africa, the ancient Near East, Eurasia and whatnot. So one of the things I also very much enjoyed about your game when we played it, and of course you were kind enough to provide visual aids, and I know that's one of the soft benefits of playing and of following the game is that people will be able to sort of delve into the world because you're providing them with visual aids, marketing materials. I love some of the stuff that you provided. Some of the advertising materials for the heavy machinery that is responsible for basically destroying Croesus. And I see, and it's funny, as I was thinking about planets, oftentimes in science fiction worlds, planets are portrayed very clean, very homogeneous and sterilized because the technology has allowed the eradication of all diseases and germs, and everybody's eating food out of a toothpaste tube.
Right.
But that's not the case. That's neither the case in good science fiction, and it's also not the case in some of the really greatest stories. In Dune, you got a real sense that these planets were not they weren't paradise. There were a few paradises, but those were seen as generally the exception rather than the rule. Most of the planets
harsh.
Are harsh. And you're giving a sense that that the use of technologies that are meant to make people's lives better can actually have a deleterious effect on them.
Yeah, because that's how it is in real life. They're good and bad to both. And one of the things that I thought about when I was working on the concept was, every time I see a science fiction movie or read a book, almost every time, every planet is homogeneous in at least one way. For instance, in Star Wars, every planet is either a swamp planet or a desert planet or an ice planet. There's no variation across the entire globe, which is silly. It's just not like that. Planets can't be like that unless they're so cold because they're so distant from any sun that they're just ice in some form. And even then, it's probably not water ice. It could be, sulfur ice or whatever. There's all kinds of things that could be the majority of it. So even on freezes, I wanted there to be variation. That's why there are poles that are frozen. There's a sea that's teeming with life because there's a lot of energy in it. Energy is what creates it. And the deserts, although they seem like they're empty, they're actually full of life also. But it's a harsh climate for people that aren't from there. So for humans and other aliens that are trying to make it a home, it doesn't fit them naturally. So they have to work hard to make it fit. But you can also work hard to make it fit in a way that is economic but not healthy for the planet itself. And that's a problem that happens frequently here. And we are built for this planet. So I wanted to bring it there and make it where, and that's why actually I put that little ad up for the machine that cuts through the dirt and pulls things out. There's a lot of things that they're working on to try and get things done faster and more efficiently, but they're all going to dirty the planet up in some way. All of them. Everything is. Because almost no energy, or very little, is put towards prevention or cleanup compared to the amount of energy put into access and speed of the need. So,
right. Yeah.
And actually, that's one thing that I liked about when we were talking about Zool, and you were telling me about the planet itself, was you modeled areas after places on Earth that you can, in your mind, you don't need to know anything about the place. When you say it's like the Indian subcontinent, anybody with any kind of geographic or historical knowledge could go, okay, got it. Or it's like the jungles of Africa or the deserts of Egypt. It doesn't take a whole lot of mental writing to understand what it's going to look and feel like.
You can jump into that. People, we have, there are certain, and there's obviously, we're speaking specific language there, but right, that's the beauty of complex language such as what we communicate in, because you can communicate something like, you can refer to Juliet standing on the balcony, and you know exactly what somebody else is talking about, even though you don't know who Juliet is.
Yeah.
But you know who Juliet is based on our cultural, the commonalities that we share. So, I'm really as a player, I'm really looking forward to continuing to play and delve into Croesus and the other worlds of the Esper Genesis campaign. And I appreciate you the opportunity for us to talk a little bit this evening and tell people what we got going on.
I have a question about Zool. What was it about the elves and dwarves that made you decide to eliminate them, as well as, for the most part, magic?
Well, I mean, I didn't really. Well, I don't see really that I've eliminated magic. I've just made it rare, and not as commonplace as it is in most D&D worlds. I don't think magic is particularly rare in most fantasy fiction.
Right.
It's certainly not as commonplace as it is in most D&D worlds, where it's replaced technology as for convenience. So you don't need to. You don't need electricity when you can cast a light spell and you can light up the whole room. So, and they are convenience, and as a greeting card trope, it's cool to have a wizard holding a light in his hand to be able to read or to write by. But the amount of energy that I would think that would consume in the real world would probably make it would just be easier to light a candle. So, and if magic is that commonplace, then why doesn't everybody use it? So I mean, everybody get these questions. I don't have any problem with elves or dwarves but they've just been they're in other people's games. So I wanted to have a more sword and sorcery. we'll delve into that, you know, in another, in another episode of this, you know, but you know, so it's just about the kind of stories that you want to tell. So, anyway,
Let me see if anybody has any questions in the chat. Hold on. Let's see. Well, there's an Ashen Forge representing, and it looks up. Somebody's saying need more Espers, and I told them there's already 3/5. I think that's enough Espers. Do you think there's too few Espers, Cliff, in the game? I mean, the characters.
I mean, I couldn't answer that question because I don't. It's like saying, are there? You don't have that many. You don't have enough redheads. I mean, I don't know. That's the question.
Yeah. Well, there's 3 out of 5 isn't bad. I think that's enough. In fact, it was more than I initially wanted, but I like the character concepts, so I rolled with more. Let's see. What are some of the big factions on the planet? On Freesis, there are... Actually, the factions are less about the planet than they are about the system. There are several moons that have real valuable commodities. There's one in particular that is full of all kinds of rare minerals that is run by a Russian consortium called Romanov Holdings. And they got license from Earth for the entire moon outside of getting it from Freesia, from the system, the core system itself. They're very probably the most powerful non-core system faction. But there's also a very powerful faction out in the asteroid belt, in the deep line, which is the second asteroid belt, the furthest one out, which is also the largest one. There's an asteroid-built space station that has been made to move in orbit along with the Crucible. It's a little bit outside the actual space, the asteroid field. That moon-sized asteroid is a very powerful player here. It's where most of the science on that really weird crucible is being done and monitored from. It's where Earth delegates generally go. It's where there's a military base there, a Navy base, that's used to prevent pirates and piracy coming in and out of the crucible. That's a pretty powerful position to be in, but it's not as powerful as Freesis. Now on Freesis, the factions on Freesis that are really in power, well, you've met one already. There's Corellian Dubois, who is a very powerful person who has, as Cliff can tell you, a long-time family name in politics and business on the planet. As long as the Gray name, actually, which is 300 years on the planet. Now, they're also involved a lot in the scrapping industry, where they're scrapping dropped spaceships. They are doing some of the science on sheep that they're trying to get to fit the environment better, and goats. Cattle aren't doing well at all, but they're in a pretty big position. The Ing family is similarly to the Gray family. They're a name that is on the wane, but not in the same way as the Gray family. They are in a position where they've chosen to become philanthropic with their money. They made a lot of money and have become philanthropists. They work to try and make sure there's enough culture on Freesis that it doesn't feel like it's completely disconnected from Earth. They work to bring science and media and all that here. There's a media mogul on one of the space stations, not around the planet, around I think Os. I think if I remember correctly, it's Os. That media magnet is actually at one point tried to call for a rebellion to rise up and separate from Earth, and it fell apart before it began. It was weak. People were relatively, there wasn't enough pressure on society for them to make such a drastic change. There was enough work, there was enough food and money, the conditions weren't so harsh that they were going to fight to separate, so that remained relatively untouched. There are a few religions that are in the system that have some power, but very few religions actually have a lot of power anywhere in the galaxy, amongst humans at least. And there's a lot of corporate interests. This crucible, being as odd as it is, has brought a lot of corporate interest into the area, but none have got a really strong footprint here. Earth has been pretty protective of it, and Freesis has been pretty smart and diligent about making sure it doesn't become a puppet for a corporatocracy or a technocracy or something. I hope that answered a little bit.
I'm looking forward to delving into the storyline this Sunday at 1 o'clock.
Sunday at 1, and then Zealots of Zool at 6. Did you want to go over anything else on Zool? No, you good? All right. If there are no more questions, we're going to check out. We just wanted to kind of check in, have a little chat, and test out some of this stuff. Make sure that we can do this. We're in 2 different places. I'm not loving that I heard it was echoey, but I'll listen to it right after and see what I can do about making adjustments there. Some of the technology issues we had last week will be solved in 2 weeks. I'm not sure about this week. I ordered another camera that will replace the phone. We'll stop using a phone as a camera. And hopefully that will solve some of the issues. So thank you very much, everybody. Until next time. See you, Cliff.